Good afternoon, everyone. You're listening to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. This is our new hour. This is our second week at our new hour, 12 p.m. So if you are looking for Friday matinee, hi, you found us. Today we're going to be talking about self-expression and why it's important in relationships. But first, I kind of want to introduce people who might just be listening and let them know what our show's about and what we're about.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a life coach for the last 20 plus years, and I've been helping people make sense of what certain distinctions are in their life to help them live powerfully. And the show is really about talking about different subjects to help you become more mindful, more aware, more conscious, and living healthy and powerful. And so a lot of the subjects that we talk about are about relationships and really how to make sense of things and interpret them in a way that's going to really support you in your life and really help you get to the next level. And
on our show specifically, we talk about not just our father-daughter relationship, but parent-teen, parent-child, parent-young adult relationships in general. So just to introduce ourselves, my name is Jasmine Urbina. I host the show with my dad, who is a life coach. His name is Alex Urbina. You've probably heard of him somewhere. But we're really excited for our new hour. And today we're going to be talking about self-expression and why it's important in relationships.
Yeah, I think that, you being able to fully express yourself and live yourself in that way is healthy, and it opens you up to the possibility that all things are possible when you allow yourself to live your life in an authentic way. And I think what gets in the way of human beings from living fully expressed are some of the limitations in our beliefs, some of our insecurities, some of our fears, some of our doubts. And a lot of that stuff gets in the way of us to really allowing ourselves to be fully expressed. And what really saddens me most is realizing that as parents, we can be teaching our kids to, or not creating a space for our kids to really have permission to live themselves, to live their life fully expressed, and to express themselves and their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions in a healthy way. And when we don't create that environment for our kids to live like that, then they grow up to be dysfunctional adults. And that's why I wanted to really talk about how important it is to be mindful of, one, as a parent, being the example of living my life fully expressed and expressing myself and giving myself permission to figure out who I am, and to not care about what people think about me, and allow myself to be authentically who I am. And then in turn teaching our kids how to live like that, so that they can live a life of freedom and passion and experience the joy and happiness that we deserve to experience.
So as a parent, is there any distinctions or anything that I can do to teach my kids how to express themselves, not just from the not be a parent who's suppressing that or judging them when they do those things? There's sometimes you could be a very open, loving parent and your kid still acts shy or doesn't want to open up to you or even be expressive at all.
Yeah, there are certain things as parents that we don't realize that we get in the way of our kids growing in a healthy, mentally and emotionally way. And I think it's important as parents to really be conscious and aware of that. And that's the purpose of the show, is really to paint that picture for the average parent to really look at themselves and go, wow, I do that, or wow, that's something that I can really learn, or I can discover more about myself. And I think, first off, you as a parent, a mom or dad, being committed to personal growth and being committed to living a higher level of consciousness and really being mindful and aware of who you're being at all times, and realize that you're an example for your kids. Whether you want to see that or not, you're being the living example that which your kids are going to model. And if you really want your kids to live a life of happiness and joy and freedom and really access that powerful part of them, you have to, at some point, you have to model that. You have to display that. You got to show them what that looks like. You telling them a million times or trying to give them permission verbally to live that is a part of the process, but the crux of it is really in your example, and you being the first one in your family to decide that I want to live fully. I want to be able to express myself wholeheartedly and not have things get in the way of that. And I think that's important.
Yeah, and as a teen, I know that there are times where I don't want to express myself, or I don't want to be a certain way or tell a certain joke because I'm afraid that my parents, my friends, my siblings are going to judge me and say like, oh, that's weird of you to say that, or that's weird of you to do that. You never do the dishes, or you never clean, so why are you doing that? So I know that as a teen, it's hard, or it's challenging, as we say. It's very challenging to do something that you normally wouldn't do because people always want to point it out. And it's sometimes it's an awkward or uncomfortable thing since we're not used to doing it and it's out of our comfort zone. How do I get over that? How do I get past that as a teen when my parents are judgmental? Or
you have to train yourself to not see it as awkward. You have to train yourself, or create a new perspective shift about how you're being perceived. For example, if I all of a sudden now want to contribute and wash the dishes, and somebody says, why are you doing the dishes? Because I am. Why are you saying that? Because I felt like it. You got to be willing to just be honest with what's really going on. You have to be willing to also speak up for yourself. That's part of the self-expression, is permission to challenge your mom when your mom goes, why all of a sudden are you being so nice? Because I'm happy. You got to be willing to just call it the way you see it. Just be be honest enough to just say, I'm just doing it because, or I'm just doing it because I feel like it, or maybe even challenge them. Say, am I not allowed to, surprise you, or am I not allowed to choose in any given moment? And, it might take a little bit of you being willing to kind of challenge your parents or the people around you, to be able to give you permission to show up however you want, however you choose. But I think it starts with you. You have to decide, I want to live like this. And then maybe you have to prep your family. Maybe you got to prep your wife or your husband or your parents or your kids, and just, sit them down and say, look, there's a new me that I want to discover in myself. And I'm going through this transition period where I'm learning how powerful it is to just decide in each new moment that I'm going to reinvent myself. So don't be afraid if all of a sudden mom, just starts laughing and dancing, because that's the way I want to be. And if I haven't been like that for the last 30 years, don't get nervous. Don't be afraid. I haven't lost it. I'm just allowing myself that space to be that. And maybe you have to kind of prep people if that's the new you that you want to start emerging and start, figuring out that that's who you want to be in the life.
Yeah. And for parents, I wouldn't necessarily say to expect your kids to do that, because I would never, our 15-year-old me would have never gone up to my parents and said, hey guys, I want to try something new here and do some self-growth. And so it's a little bit of a weird thing for a kid to do, especially if they're not used to stuff like that and you don't do that as a parent. So maybe next time they do something different, don't point it out in a way that could make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, embrace it. Shed some highlight on it. Acknowledge it. Hey, Chrissy, I really liked that yesterday you started singing in the bathroom, and then that gave me permission to sing, and how refreshing that is. You want to really acknowledge and give your kids validation that it's okay to be like that. It's okay to express themselves in that way. Or, wow, you did your hair purple. It looks awesome on you. It's what kind of statement do you want to make, or how does that make you feel? You want to be proactive rather than reactive. Instead of allowing all your fears to come up and all you projecting your fear onto your kids about how they're expressing themselves, or having your judgments get in the way of them being able to fully express themselves. You might want to be aware of that and catch yourself on it. I'm glad you said that, because you're painting a picture for some of the parents that don't realize that they do that. They get in the way of their kids expressing themselves like that.
And as you were explaining that, acknowledging your kids for doing something different or cool or, unusual.
That's a better word, unusual, instead of weird. because you kept using the word weird, and I wanted to interject in the weirdness, because there's nothing wrong with being weird. In fact, when you said earlier, if you do something out of the ordinary and then your mom goes, well, that was weird. And, it's okay to say, well, yeah, because I'm weird. It's okay to be weird. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be whoever you choose to be in each moment. And I think that that's the extraordinary parent, the parent that is really evolved to the level where they can create that safe space for their kids to try to figure out who they are. Because that's the whole point of teenagehood, is as a teenager, your kids don't know who they are. And so they're in this process of trying to discover and figure out who they are. And then some of those kids that never have that space to figure out who they are, they go out into the world as young adults, still confused about who they are and living suppressed, miserable, boring, and tasteless lives, because they never really had permission to try to discover who they are. They couldn't find their greatness. And you don't want to be a part of that. You don't want to be in your 60s or 70s looking back, watching your 40-year-old son struggling because, with his identity and his self-confidence and assurance, because you were in the way.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to point out was that although some parents think that they are acknowledging their kids by saying, oh, why are you doing the dishes? Or, the way that they say it, that is them acknowledging it. They just don't know how to say, hey, thank you so much for doing the dishes today. They don't know how to say it, so they say it in a different way. But maybe... like,
it's about time you did some dishes.
Yeah. And that's what makes us storm off and leave half the dishes undone. So maybe, practice saying it in a different way.
Yeah, practice embracing it rather than throwing a sarcasm in there, or tainting an acknowledgement with some of your resentment, or some of, the stuff that you've been holding on to. Don't taint that moment. Celebrate it with an acknowledgement. Or, it was funny because before we started the show, our board op, Andrew, was saying something to himself out loud, and then he started laughing. And I turned to him and I said, oh, you crack yourself up, don't you? And he started laughing. And I said, my wife does that. she has this corny sense of humor where she cracks herself up. And you have to, when you're in relationships with people that have that type of personality, you have to learn to love that. I love that about you. And give them that space to be that, and see if you can figure out how to find the goodie in that. Find the thing that's special about it, rather than making fun of it or putting it down. But learn how to love the space that people have around you, to feel safe enough to be who they are in each new moment. To choose to be funny or silly or weird or corny or whatever it is. Give people permission to be whoever they want around you, and I think that your relationships are going to go to a whole nother level. And
another thing too that I've recently discovered, even though I've been told this 100 million times by you and my mom and everybody, I just recently discovered that the more I resist things that I don't like that people do, the more I get annoyed by it, and it just drives me up the wall. Or I get mad and I don't want to talk to that person, or for whatever reason I'm annoyed with that person, when if I just let them do whatever they're doing, I would have no annoyance with it at all, and it wouldn't bother me. So it's not so much about them, like giving them permission to do what they're doing. Give yourself permission to leave it alone, to let them, so that you're not, in this state of constant agitation, like being annoyed by something everyone does. Yeah, and another distinction that we've talked about on other shows, and I'll bring it back in here because you just shed light on it. The distinction you're talking about is resistance. When you're in a psychological resistance in somebody being a certain way, you create your own frustration. You create your own annoyance. You create your own a feeling of being annoyed or not liking it. And so the trick is to not be in a psychological resistance to people being whoever they choose to be in each moment. You got to remember this. God gave us the ability to choose for ourselves how we want to show up in each new moment. It's called free will. Don't deny somebody their free will to be who they are around you because you don't like it, or it doesn't please you, or doesn't make you feel good about yourself. The world doesn't owe you anything.
So let people be who they are, including your husbands and your wives and your kids. Train yourself to allow yourself to just be that open, loving, inviting space for people to figure out who they are. You're big enough. You're more powerful enough to be able to be that for them. So why not give yourself permission to be that for others? It's truly a gift.
Yeah, and another question I had, kind of, it goes a little bit off of, being a teen and having judgmental parents. What about the parents who are, I guess you could say, suppressive of your expression? So there's a difference between judgmental, because if my parents are being judgmental, it's, oh, I'm afraid they're going to say this, but I want it so bad I'm going to do it anyways. And then there's the ones that are suppressive, where it's, you can't wear your hair like that, go back in your room, you're not going to school today, or, there's different levels. So judgmental we kind of covered, but what about the parents that are super controlling and really oppressive?
Here's what it all boils down to. Underneath all of those symptoms, whether it's suppressive or judgmental, at the root cause, it's all about the fear. As a mom or a dad, if they really got honest with themselves, they would finish the sentence, what I'm afraid of is that because you put that ring in your nose, what I'm afraid of is that people are going to judge you. What I'm afraid of is people are going to make fun of you. What I'm afraid of is that you're going to get hurt by that. What I'm afraid of. And so what happens is, if we're honest as parents about our fear and we share that with our kids, I think you will find a different experience with our kids. I think you will light up your kid's face if you had the audacity and the courage to tell your son or daughter, look, I'm going to allow for you to express yourself like that, but I just want to share one of my fears so that you're aware of it. I'm afraid that, and then share your fear. I think your son or daughter's face will light up and go, wow, mom, wow, dad, thanks for sharing that with me. I didn't realize that. I'd rather you be honest enough to share your fears with your son or your daughter about some of the things that you're trying to control or some of the things that you don't like the way you see them, because what it'll do is it'll open up a whole new possibility to have such a powerful relationship rather than allowing your fear to dictate their choices. Now you're wondering why you and your son or daughter are at odds with each other, because you're not conscious and aware and honest enough to have that kind of conversation with your kids, and all you're doing is just telling them what they can and can't do. And that contradicts with teenagehood, where they're trying to flap their own wings and realize for themselves that that they have the ability to be who they are. And so then you guys are bumping heads and then wondering why that whole process is going on.
And what the crazy thing is, and I realize this as you're saying all that, is there are a lot of things that parents say that could come across so much more effective to their kids if they worded it differently. So, in that example, even going back to the dishes example, we had said, if you just word it differently and say, hey, thank you, instead of giving them a whoa factor, why are you doing that? There's so much more that you're going to get out of your kid by saying, hey, I'm afraid that this is going to happen if you do this. It's like almost like the kids won't know what to do, that they'll just go back to their room and change. Or
yeah, here's one of the issues about helping parents use the right words to be able to empower and inspire their kids, rather than press their buttons or tag them or push them away, is when something's happening and you're observing it, like your son or daughter all of a sudden washing the dishes, as a human being, as a parent, if you still have unresolved issues from your past, like resentment, guilt, you have all kinds of dysfunctional stuff going on that you haven't dealt with in a healthy way and released it and let it go and move past it and evolve to the higher stage, it's almost like automatic pilot for you to say something sarcastic. It's almost like breathing for you to say something that they look at you and just roll their eyes and then quit and then go to their room. It's almost like you have to really be mindful of some of the work that you have to get done to be able to flush out all that stuff, so you can learn how to parent and have the right words to respond in a powerful way. Like just saying, hey, thank you for doing that. That means a lot to me. If you got a lot of stuff in your psyche that you haven't worked through, you're not going to know how to respond like that. And so some of the work that I do with parents as I'm coaching them is teaching them, one, how to articulate themselves in a powerful way versus in a negative way. And then I also do some work with them to flush out some of that old baggage so that they're freed up to be able to think like that on their own.
Sounds great. Hey, stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.